Okay folks, a little bit of a drab background. I know I'm actually traveling on business right now, and thanks to the miracle that is Netflix streaming, I have finally watched The Hunger Games. And I may be late to this party, but I really feel like I need to talk to you about it while it's still fresh in my head. I put off watching this thing for a very long time. There are two reasons. The first one, it's based off a book series, and the age range of the audience for that series is of an age that makes me really cautious. It's the same demographic that made Twilight huge, so that was thing one. Thing two can be summed up in just a couple of words: Battle Royale. I am an enormous fan of the film Battle Royale, and frankly, it's the same basic plot. A bunch of teenagers have to kill each other until there's only one left. I was very convinced that I would not be able to set those similarities aside and set my love of Battle Royale aside and be able to appreciate this film for what it was. I decided, I needed to just give it a shot, and I did tonight, and you know what? I'm glad I did. Just addressing the Battle Royale thing very quickly. Yes, the very basic premise is effectively the same, but the execution, completely different for so many reasons. Battle Royale is down to simple, effective brutality, and that is what makes it such a brilliant film. This is something else altogether. This is a bit more nuanced. This has a lot more kind of going on behind the scenes in terms of the nuts and bolts of why everything's happening. Battle Royale wasn't concerned about the whys. It was concerned about showing you this carnage. This movie isn't about that, and it's that different intent in the execution that makes it a completely different film despite the similarities in premise. So, what works in this thing? Honestly, the world. The world is really fascinating, and the whole thing with the districts and the level that technology is at, and even the stuff that in the trailer looked ridiculous, like the Lady Gaga costumes that everyone in the Capitol wears, it works and it's cool, and it helps build this really big, really interesting world. The performances are also spot on. I already knew Jennifer Lawrence was a good actress, but she's got just sheer presence and incredible subtlety here. She conveys an awful lot by doing an awful little, and that's a really hard thing to pull off, and she nails that so well. And she's supported by a great cast as well, many of whom are capable of doing that same thing. Woody Harrelson, great example. Donald Sutherland does very little but conveys so much. You've got some more over-the-top performances as well, but they're great too. Wes Bentley gives a good performance for the first time since American Beauty. Stanley Tucci is always great in everything. It doesn't matter if the movie sucks or not. He's always great. Elizabeth Banks, she really surprised me just because her character is so aggressively shallow. It's really kind of amazing. Just across the board, incredibly well cast, very well performed. And I actually want to single out the sound design and the music on this thing. I like good sound work, but I'm not an audiophile. But the sound design on this thing is incredible, and so much is conveyed with those sounds. Some of the hits that are delivered in the fights, they're brutal, and they're brutal because of the sound design and other things as well. The sound when Katniss draws that bow and those metal arrows scrape against the bow, that is a signature sound. And the music too, it often plays against what you would expect from many of the scenes that it's used in, but that all plays very well into the atmosphere of the film. As much as this film surprised me on a lot of levels, and I'm definitely glad I saw it, it's not perfect. Remember that fantastic world I talked about? Well, it's so good that when the actual Hunger Games themselves start, it feels a little bit like a step back, because the Hunger Games, the competition where all these teenagers have to fight it out to the death, takes place in the woods. And the woods could be anywhere in any time frame, and you lose all the flavor and uniqueness of the world that we've just been with for the first hour. Thankfully, we still get little touches of it because it flashes back and we see Woody Harrelson still negotiating for things for his team, and you see the different districts, viewing the games as they were going on. So we touch back in that world, but the actual Hunger Games themselves, probably the least interesting part of the movie. It's not bad necessarily, but another thing that the games themselves have working against it is the camera work. There's a lot of very unnecessary shaky cam in this, and sometimes it works when it's a more low-key episode and you just get that handheld feel and the camera's just bobbing a little bit. It makes it feel a little more intimate, and that's fine. But as soon as the action scene starts, the camera starts doing this. and it makes the action scenes difficult to follow. The main reason I'm able to follow the action scenes at all is because of that brilliant sound design I mentioned. But the camera work itself is distracting. It's not as offensive as these things can be. I've seen some movies that are so bad with the shaky cam, I can't even watch them. This isn't that bad, but it's not good, and I wish they hadn't done it. I suspect part of the reason they do it is to be able to secure a PG-13 rating, because if these fights were filmed any more clearly, this thing would probably have to be rated R, which would alienate the main demographic. You know, the people who actually read the books. So it may have been as much a logistical decision as a stylistic one, but it just still annoys me. And there are a couple of story aspects that don't play as well as they probably should have, and I think they're probably really only there because they were such an important part of the book. There's a character, I'm not even going to name this character because I think I might end up getting too much into spoilers with that, but there's a character who, it seems very obvious from the way this character is used that they are very big in the book and very important in the book. And they're important in certain aspects in this, but they don't appear a lot. So when this character eventually gets paid off, the film, it kind of banks too much on that payoff and it doesn't feel earned. I'm sure it probably works very well in the book. The problem with the movie is it was already 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and for this payoff to have worked correctly, you probably would have needed at least another 15 minutes with this character specifically for the payoff to work as well as they're trying to make it. There's some other nitpicky things. A lot of the CGI didn't work for me. Most of the fire looked really fake, and I mean that both in terms of the fake fire that's on the clothes of the characters as well as the real fire that goes on in the forest at one point. There's some creatures at the end. They look a little wonky. Thankfully, they're kept in darkness. That helps a little bit. But for something that was hyped this much and had the budget that I'm sure this thing had, I was expecting a little bit more solid special effects work. But you know, these are minor quibbles, and this thing it really surprised the heck out of me. And now, I gotta go and see the next one before the third one comes out. So let me ask you this. What's a movie that had been hyped up for you and you were sure, I'm not really gonna enjoy this. You went to see it and it turned out to be way better than you thought it was gonna be. Give me an example and let's share, let's talk about it. Until next time, this council is adjourned.